There we go. Now I'm recording. All right. And someone else is in the meeting. There's Kiana. Hi, Kiana. And so anytime you do any serious animating in Cinema, you don't want to be in standard view. You want to come over to animate view. But in animate view, by default, things won't show up down here unless they have keyframes. Okay. So there's two ways to look at everything. Just like in After Effects, you have the regular, keyframes, which is also sometimes called the dope sheet, right? That's this view. And then you have the F-curve mode, right? And before you start animating, make sure that your project is at 24 FPS. The shortcut for that is Control D to get to the project settings. And I gave myself just 2 seconds here. And so we want to create an idle animation, meaning that, this is just, if the character is not doing anything, but just standing there in a game, or not a game, just an animation, it's just, not completely frozen. We don't want to, especially with characters, there's not a whole lot of instances where we want them to be completely motionless. That looks strange, especially, if they're moving and then they freeze. It looks like they're frozen. It's not something, even like non-realistic characters really do. And so let's go ahead and make an idle here. And the important thing for the idle is that it's short. And so let's say everybody does the same length here. Let's do 24 frames per second and 2 seconds. So that's 48 frames total. And so let's go ahead and I've got all the body set up from last time and my controls. And so the controls we can see here, we made all these things I can click on here, the controls. I added a background here. And you know what I'm going to do to make sure I don't click on any of the background stuff? I'm going to put protection tags on those. It's like locking the layer in After Effects. So you can Shift C, protection, and put that on the background. This is the, in photography, this is called a cyc. Essentially the thing you put in the background. It's actually cyclorama, right? CYC. I'll go with that for now. And then just put one on the light. There we go. And this other light. There. And so now I'm not going to accidentally move that stuff. And so I'll be able to click on these things. And all the controls, right, we made out of what? Out of nulls, right? We're able to select them over here and get the different parts. And so let's start with the body over here. And remember, we want it to be a looping animation so that it starts. And so this is maybe his, we'll have him just sort of shift his weight back and forth. Just do this kind of thing. You can't see my feet, but I'm lifting them off of the ground. Kind of like marching in place a little bit. So let's do the feet first. And so I've got my left leg goal and right leg goal. And so let's do left leg here. And so I'm just going to go ahead and set a keyframe for that here. And then up a little bit. Maybe it comes forward just slightly. Keyframe. And then I want to make sure it gets back to where it was. And so the best way to make sure that it goes back to exactly to where it was at the beginning is not to move it back, but to grab the keyframes and control drag them, which is copy drag, and hold down Shift. That keeps it lined up. And now I know that those are exactly where they were at the beginning, right? And so it's not going to have any weird hitch. And so there we got it, lifting the one leg up. Let's grab the other leg goal, the right leg goal. And I'm going to set a keyframe there. And I'm at 24, which is halfway. And let's go halfway here. And again, sort of move this. Remember, never move in 3 dimensions at a time. 2 dimensions at most. And there we go. Add a keyframe there. And again, it's not going to show you, it's only going to show you the stuff that you click on. And so here, And remember, if things get really out of whack in the graph editor here, the navigation keys are the same. So if you hold down 1 and move, that's moving it back and forth. If you hold down 2, that's zooming in and out. And then your magic key, if the graph editor gets all messed up and you're just seeing something like this, is H. It'll reframe and like normalize the view so that you can see like relevant information. And so now same thing, I'll grab this and Control Shift drag this over to the end so that I know that's exactly where it was before. There it goes. All right, and so now if I hit play, there we go. It's a little slow. Maybe we'll make this shorter, but I'm just going to get all the relative motion done, and then I can squish it real easily in After Effects. Cool, there we go. Or in Cinema, rather. Just sort of like change the timing to what I want. So it's one arm, then the, one leg, then the other leg. And so let's get the body now. And since these are IK chains, remember I can move the body separately from the legs, right? And so let's have the body sort of lift up a little bit for each part where the leg comes up. And so if I want to see these here while I'm working, I can see that there. And so now I'm going to go ahead and set some keyframes for the body. So let's say it's there. And then, you know, it lifts up just slightly because I'm also going to tilt it. Maybe kind of like that. And there we go. And let's just look at those body keyframes. There we go. And so now I'll do the same thing. Control Shift drag those over. And this will be, I haven't done any tilting, I just did some lifting, right? And so this is kind of like, you know, using the feet and then also breathing a little bit, you know. So maybe we'll put a little scale change in there. And so now the body though is going to be the same. All I did was add the rotation keyframes or the scale keyframes, but I did it using this key. So remember, when you use that key, it sets a keyframe for all of the transform properties, okay? So we have position stuff, scale stuff, and rotation stuff. And so that's fine. You just need to know you're doing that. And so I have this loop here. Now I'm going to Control Shift drag that over. There we go. And so now if I hit play, there we go. It's sort of lifting up a little bit each time. Okay, so that's better. But now let's get it to tilt a little bit as if, you know, it's pulling up that leg. And so that's just going to be our rotation parameter here. Let's get a little bit more real estate. There we go. You can see what's going on. And so now there's a keyframe there, and I can, nope, not that rotation. Always, I'm going to be rotating on the x-axis. Should be not that one, this one. Yeah, there we go. We can see how that moves. And so there's already a keyframe there, and so he's lifting up this leg. I'll move this leg this way and grab this one and move it down the other way. And there we go. Make sense so far? What's going on here? Yeah, and it's exaggerated, right? Cool. And let's add a little bit of turn. So that was rotating on this axis. If we rotate on, I believe it's this one here. Yeah. And so we'll rotate a little bit this way and then a little bit that way. There we go. Yeah, okay, there's a little bit of a hitch here at the end when Cinema 4D plays it back, but because there's that extra frame. But as long as, you know, your beginning point is always the same as your ending point, that's what we want. So don't be thrown off by the slight, you know, when Cinema 4D snaps back, there'll be a, you know, 1 frame hitch, but that'll be okay. Cool. All right, so that's better. Let's get a little bit of eye motion in there. same rules about eye motion is that we'll have them move the eye target. Remember we did that? And how do we have this thing controlling the where it looks at? What's the name for that tag? Anybody remember? Target tag, right. And so now here, let's go ahead and right, yeah, there are several things with the word target in them. There's like a target deformer and a target MoGraph thing. So pay attention there. You want the one that just looks like one big target. And so here, let's go ahead and get the target. I'll set a keyframe. And then a couple keyframes later, like I'm pretty much using 2 frames as my default for eye stuff. I'll have it look this way. Maybe not too far, right about there. And we'll keyframe that. And then stay in that position. And so in order, this gets people when they're doing this, right? If I hit H here for the eyeball keys, right? And so he looks that way. And now I want him to look the other way. If you grab this and you just move it over this way and you set another key, look what happens on the chart. He's going to move his eye quickly here and then real slow coming back over to the other side. And that's going to look weird. Watch this. Right? It's not super slow, but we want our eyeball movement to be quick. You watch yourself in the mirror. And so here, we're going to control shift drag this, right? Control shift drag. Totally your friend when you're setting keys. So it looks that way, looks that way. Maybe it looks up a little bit at the end. Over here, let's have it look up real quick here. Hello? Who's that? D. Warren. Let's see this. And again, we want to grab this one and control shift drag this over here. There we go. And then back to the original part. So control shift drag. Right, the control is the copy functionality. The shift is the locking it into place functionality. There we go. There we go. All right, so we got something. And now I can, you can see that, he's in motion now the whole time, which is good. It feels like a living thing, except the arms are kind of locked into those positions there. And so we got to get a little bit of arm motion there. And so I'm going to get the arms here. Let's get right arm. Let's move this one. I'm going to set a keyframe. And then maybe this one might need to start, let's say it moves up a little bit. There's the arm. Do we set a keyframe? There's a keyframe. Okay, so again, same thing about 12 here. Move this. Let's say up here. And set another keyframe. And so you see I'm really working on just 4 spots here. If I look at all the keyframes, to lay everything out, to block it out, everything's, except for the eyeball stuff, is on just quarter, half, 3/4. And so here's the other arm. There it is. We want the arm to get back to where it was here. So control shift drag. There we go. Because once we get the basic motion here, then let's say here, we'll have it come down a little bit and over in, and set another keyframe there, and then come back to the starting position. Right, so putting these positions in, super important. And maybe a little bit too much, but we got that blocked out. And now let's get the other arm here, the left arm. Whoops, don't change that hierarchy, left arm. And here. So let's go ahead and this one's going to go down before the other one. And so it's here. And because we want the body to work symmetrically, but one arm doesn't move up with the other arm, it moves down with the other leg. And so here, let's move this one down a little bit and just in. Yep. Okay. Kiana, go ahead. Just talk. You guys don't need to hit the raise. Yeah. And the one I did on Monday is up. So this is like the follow-up to the one on Monday. And so there. And now let's have him raise his hand on the other side. And so this one can go back up. Kind of like this. And set another keyframe. And then again, Control Shift drag these to the end. There we go. All right, so now let's look at all of that together. Okay, cool. Now, so we've got the basic motion there. We got a little bit of body up and down. I started with the legs and I just made the leg timing work. Pick up one foot, pick up the other foot. And then I did the body to, get the body to react to the legs. So it goes up when the legs go up and tilts a little bit in the direction of the legs. And then I did just some movement for the eyeball, and then making the arms, move a little bit opposite of the legs, right? Everybody see all that? That's important, right? You usually don't lift the arm. When we get to the walk cycles, this will be more obvious, but your arm and your leg are going in opposite directions on the same side of your body, right? When the right leg goes up, the left arm should go up, right? So just a little bit of movement there. Cool. Now, once that's all in place, you can switch over from F-curve mode to keyframe mode. Look at the stuff that way. And there it's a little bit simpler. You see something got a little nudge there. I'll nudge everything back into place. Cool. And let's not see the eyeball stuff and just look at the other things, right? And so just with that in mind, now you could do things where you sort of displace things a little bit. If I wanted the arms to be a little bit behind the legs. And so here I could take both arm goals and move these over like so. But now there'll be this gap at the beginning. And so there's a bunch of things you could do here with this, but one of them is that you can sort of loop in. So this is interesting, right? If I look at these and look at the F curves of them, right? There's no information over here to the left of this because that's when I started. And I moved all this over to sort of delay it compared to the legs. But in the track controls up there, here's where all the looping stuff happens. And so you can loop after or you can loop before, which is kind of weird. But it's really just repeating the pattern, but repeating it before. And so I'll say repeat. And when I do that, look down here. It repeats it before the keyframes happen. Right? So that's handy. It creates a seamless loop because I shifted it over. And so now the stuff at the end of the animation will match the stuff at the beginning of the animation. Does that make sense there? Right? So I'm displacing this in time. And so now, there we go. See, now the timing for his arms and his legs are not exactly the same, right? I can delay this some more. Right, if you delay too much, then it starts to look a little strange. But just a few frames does a lot, because when you move, you're not moving, all of your limbs are not completely synchronized, right? But it's much more easy to set up the original animation just working with those quarter, half, three-quarter, whole loop settings. And then when it gets to this, you know that you have a continuous loop. You know that the beginning of your loop matches your end of your loop. And so if you take that whole loop and you just displace it, as long as you've got the same information happening before and after, I can slide this backwards and forwards, and I know I'm always going to have a continuous loop. I'm not going to get any weird hitch at the beginning or the end of this loop. Does that make sense for everybody? What's going on there? No, this stuff I'm doing right here, this is all just pretty standard. It's been here for a while. Like as far as the way to loop stuff, we can loop. If that was just the before, I can also loop after, right? The looping in Sim 4D way better than After Effects. You can say, I mean, you can do the same thing in After Effects. It's just a pain in the butt. You can say after repeat, and then if I zoom out, you can see that it repeats the same stuff. And this is a smart loop, so that if any of the original loop information changes, all of the loops change. I'm going to undo that. So super handy to sort of wrap your mind around this stuff. And so now, adjusting the overall timing is probably easier up here, because you can just sort of see things easily and sort of move them. But, now I can, delay those so that it's a little not quite so, versus this, versus this. Looks a little more natural because it's not all perfectly lined up, but it's easier to envision all the poses, when it is lined up, versus sort of lining it up and then just sort of delaying some things. And we could do the same with the body. If we come into the body and first make sure that we have loop repeat before and repeat. There we go. And so now if I delay the body from I have the right thing selected here, right? From the legs. Let's look at that. I'll try to make it really exaggerated. Right. And so we get this sort of delay with the body coming up, where the legs are sort of pushing up the body. Right. And again, the body keyframes are looped. And so now you can see that, you guys can see that on the call, right? These extra black lines over here, right? Those are the ones that appear when I set the track settings. I get to the track settings by clicking on it over here. And remember, things don't show up over here until you set a keyframe. Okay. So you select the controller and set a keyframe, and then it shows up down here, right? So it also is a little bit cleaner than After Effects in that way, in that there's not 100,000 things over here. It's just the stuff you're animating. Cool. Here's Koi. Hey, Koi, how's it going? Good. Good. I'm going to bust your chops a little bit here. It actually starts at 11:30, right? Okay. All right. That's... You overslept the 11:30 meeting? Okay. Cool. There we go. And so I'm going to go ahead and file. Remember, when you're saving in After Effects or Cinema, save incremental. So you have copies of your project. So file, save incremental, and go ahead and render. And again, the timing thing here, now that I've got everything set up, if I wanted to make it faster, I could just select the whole thing and sort of smush it a little bit, and actually it should still work because well, no, I didn't set loop on everything, right? So how would I set everything to loop? If I grab it all, shift, and then over here, just say repeat, repeat. And so now I believe that everything is looping. Oh, actually that won't work for a good reason. Let's look. That won't work because my leg loops are not a full loop. Let's look at the leg loop once. Remember, I set the leg, he lifts the left leg, then he lifts the right leg. And so this is a good, we should make even though the leg doesn't do anything here, I'm going to add some keyframes that just hold it in that position. Right? And so this is the right leg doing nothing and then lifting. And so here's the left leg doing something and then staying put. So Control Shift Drag. And so now that I've done that, if I didn't do that, it would loop just this part, which is half as long as our total loop, right? And so now all of my loops are the same except for my eye. I didn't put any stuff here in the eye at the beginning. And so I'm going to grab my eye keyframes. And again, Control Shift Drag. So it takes up the whole thing. And so now all of my loops should be exactly 48 frames. There we go. Cool. So now, since they're all exactly the same time, I could take, I could do some smushing up here. Otherwise, now. There we go. If I want them to go even faster. It's a little frantic. Let's back it off a little bit. Cool. But I'm just going to put it back to the 48 for now, just to keep everything symmetrical. So setting complete 48 frame loops and then playing with the displacement, right? If you just set the loops this time, that's probably good, right? The displacement thing is, next level. But you can see how that really does improve the overall look of it versus having everything be completely lined up, right? Once again, here, everything is completely lined up. If I go like line up my body and my arms, right arm, there we go. There we go. I'm gonna get everything. Let's make it 48 again. There we go. Right, and so it was better before when things are displaced a little bit. Make sense? How about Itzel? You able to follow along there? Right, so the keys to victory here, making sure that each part of the limb is 48 frame loop. Number two, making sure that your body movement is symmetrical but opposite. So if you lift the right leg, your other arm should go up, right? And generally you don't lift your arm and leg on the same side of the body. Making sure that the eye keyframes are very short, just 2, as the eye moves around to make it look like eye movement and not like weird, slow eye movement. Let's double check I didn't do that by accident. Ooh, I did, because my eye wasn't totally 48 frames. And so again, here I have to Control Shift drag this out to 45. There we go. And then here, my eye's moving slowly. And so I want to grab this one and Control Shift drag over here. So all of my eye movements happen within just a few frames. That's better. Cool. Awesome. And then if you guys want to, don't copy and paste my character, but if you want to copy and paste the light and the psych and the other light, go ahead. And for render settings on yours, just go ahead and use the standard renderer. We talked about using the other renderer last time, but just use the standard one. And you do want to turn on ambient occlusion. That'll make this look nice. So that you can render out a GIF of your character doing its thing. All right, sort of frame them up. There we go. No, make sure you're in standard renderer. I added ambient occlusion, and then make sure that you're doing high def. So I mean 1920 by 1080, I guess. There you go. And make sure that your render frame rate, this gets people in cinema. Everybody remember this? You have your project frame rate, and then you have your render frame rate. I wish they were linked by default, but they're not. And so we're always working at what frame rate? 24, right? And so you got to switch your frame rate in 2 places, right? So I'll come back to standard and do it before you start working. So Control D. And so here in the project settings, you got to say 24 FPS. Then in the render settings, you got to make sure it says not 30, but 24, because that'll really be messy if you work in 24 and then render 30. Yep, those. Thanks for asking. So those are the two spots, and then make sure it says all frames, and 0 to 48, 1920 by 1080, and yeah. The other thing I added was under effects here, just to make it the shadowing nicer, is ambient occlusion. We'll get to more rendering stuff later, but effect, ambient occlusion, and yeah, we're only rendering 48 frames here, so this might be a little bit slow on your machine, but it shouldn't take days, maybe an hour or so, depending on. Oh, like it's a bowling ball? Oh. Yeah, you could do that. So if you for the body sphere, if you you could use a Boolean to cut 3 holes into it. So here, let's say, kind of like, I'll move it off to the side, kind of like here. There we go, kind of like that. And then maybe control drag, again, your friend. Let's rotate this a little bit. I mean, where would the holes be compared to the eyeball? That seems like it could be a matter of some debate, but just keeping it relatively simple. There we go, kind of like that. Yeah, let's get this one in. It's only 3, right? Is that right? Yeah. It's been a little while since I went bowling, obviously. There we go. Okay, so those are there now, but they need to be relative to the body, right? This is a good parenting exercise. So we need to put them all here underneath the body null, which is animated. And so they should move with the character. There you go. They move with the character now. And so now we can use Shift-C, the too late. Now it's a bowling ball. And so we're going to put now Alt-G to group those cylinders together. And then I'll put the body under the bowl and these under the bowl the other way. There we go. All right. Cool. And he needs to look like a bowling ball. And so in our red material, we're going to come in here and dial up some bowling ball noise. And so over here, noise. Hold on, am I in the right thing? Let's double check. It's a good learning opportunity. Yeah, so I need to use the diffuse because that's where the color is. The reflection is the reflection. And so here under color, texture, noise. And then let's go ahead and find one that looks like bowling ball swirl. This one. There we go. That's pretty good. And then pick some really obnoxious bowling ball colors. Something like my favorite pink. Right there. There we go. And then you got to put it on the, well, I got to texture the, so this bowling ball part is optional. Okay. You don't have to do this part, but it is pretty cool. There we go. So now, Yeah. There we go. Now he's a bowling ball. So he's really noisy. And he's got the bowling ball, you know, holes up there. I suppose you could put like a bowling ball brand on the side of him. But yeah, let's be real. I mean, can anyone name a bowling ball brand off the top of their head? It'll be revealing, I guess, if you can. Oh, yeah. Bruns, something like that. Anyway, Brunswick. There we go. That sounds like a bowling brand. Sure. Okay. All right. So let me